Hey Lance, thanks for joining us here in these unprecedented times. I would really rather be there in Chicago with you, but it sounds like you've got things. Well, first of all, I should ask how things are going for you with everything that's going on.
Pretty good. It's been very steady. I don't think we're where we would have expected to be had there not been a pandemic going on, but we're holding on. We're heading into what I would call our, slower part of the year anyway. I think brewers kind of slow down in November, December. So we're kind of heading into that slowdown with Thanksgiving coming up.
Now, you guys, your yeast is made for both professional brewers and home brewers alike. Have you noticed an uptick with home brewers because they have more time on their hands? And I imagine the brewers are doing maybe less volume because of everything that's going on, or how is that working?
Definitely there was an uptick in homebrew, and which we notice more in the warmer months, because that's when it usually actually slows down a little bit in the summer, when I think people are out and about and visiting breweries and things like that. But in the winter it usually starts picking up. But yes, we definitely it's been an up year on the homebrew side for sure.
You know how there's dad jokes? I feel like there's this brewer joke, and I feel like we could do a special of just brewers telling us the same joke over and over again. And stop me if you've heard it before. It goes a little something like this. When we get introduced to whoever the main brewer is at a brewery that we're visiting, we'll say, "Oh, so you're the guy that makes the beer." And they'll say, "Well, no, technically the yeast makes the beer." Yeah, and we all have a big laugh. But that really is the truth. Truth in jest there, right? The yeast is really the one that's doing all the hard work for the beer that we enjoy so well.
Yes, brewers make what is essentially a yeast growth medium, and we drink the waste product.
We drink their waste product. I've never heard it said so eloquently, but good job, yeast. How many different strains? Is it strains of yeast that you guys produce?
Right. In our catalog, Frozen Away, we've got hundreds of strains, but as far as the amount we're propagating at any one time, that's going to be less. So maybe on the order of 15 to 30 different strains we're propping a week. So it's a small fraction of what we have Frozen Away.
And different strains of yeast produce different results. It's a matter of how they make the waste that we enjoy so well. Can you kind of walk us through what makes yeast different? Yeast isn't yeast. There's not just one big box of yeast there, right?
Right. There are actually two main species of yeast used in most beer. So the ale yeast and lager yeast. Ale yeast are Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but there are a lot of different strains within that species. And for example, some of them are very flavor forward, like we really notice the flavor products that they're producing. And a good example of this would be like a German Hefeweizen yeast, where if you drink a beer like that, you get big banana notes on the nose and clove notes. All of those flavor compounds are made by the yeast.
What causes yeast to be different? Why are there different yeasts? How does that happen?
Much like there are different dogs. Humans have selected for certain traits just over the millennia. They mutate naturally every time they reproduce. So it's just a long period of time, and brewers selecting for, unwittingly selecting for certain traits.
You mentioned dog breeders. You can get, I think, a little bit more instant results with dogs than you can with yeast. Is that fair to say? Or can you change yeast to where you want it to produce the kind of effect that you want it to produce over the course of a couple of months or years? How does that work?
Sure. So all of the strains that exist now that a lot of brewers use, our job is to basically keep them in that state and not change. So when we have them frozen away, they are, in that state, and we'll grow them up, and they won't change that much in those few generations while we're growing it. Brewer will use it 8 to 10 generations and then come back to us, and they'll start fresh again.
Lance, how did you get into this game? I know you grew up not far from here, right? And you're a Kewanee fella, is that what I hear?
I grew up on a farm about 10 minutes outside of Kewanee.
Okay.
In Stark County, so I went to Stark County High School.
I can't imagine you had somebody come into Stark High School and say, "Hey, everybody, I deal with yeast for a living." Like, how do you get into this? How do you fall in love with yeast?
Yeah, so that definitely did not happen to me. But the funny thing is I subjected the students to that at one point, because I went back and talked to the students. It was like a year ago or so, and I kind of told them about my path and what I was doing, which was a surreal experience, because I was literally describing to junior high and high school kids how to make beer. Because I was trying to put it in a context, just explain to what I do on a daily basis. And I think, to do that, they need to know how beer is made and where we come into the process.
We've talked to a lot of breweries on the show that use Omega yeast, and they swear by it, and they love the yeast that you guys are making. Can I ask you about the challenges? Because you're dealing with living things, right? Like, how do you get it from there to here? That's not something you can just put it in an envelope, can you? Or can you?
No, I mean, we start small. So there's literally little petri dishes that have a pure yeast strain struck out on it. You can scrape up a few yeast cells, put it in a small flask. It'll start to grow. You step it up to a larger volume. It'll keep growing. So it's just a lot of it's about starting pure and using good technique at each of these transfers. But you just keep feeding the yeast, essentially. Just give it more food and it makes more yeast babies. And do this over 5 to 7 day period until you have enough for a brewer to use in, say, a 10-barrel batch. And then we effectively make beer in our process, but we don't. It's not very good beer because we are introducing oxygen all throughout the process. We're mixing it. We're doing everything we can to make more yeast cells, which doesn't necessarily make good beer. So we ditch the beer in the end, send this concentrated slurry in a package, and ship overnight wherever we ship. So we have outrageous UPS bills because we ship everything next day air.
Lance, thanks so much for your time today. Learned a lot about yeast, and keep up the great work, because the brewers just rave about the yeast that they get from you guys. So keep up the good work, and thanks. Appreciate your time, Lance. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.